All right, so you've joined us for a guided tour of BLM-Utah WildSNAP program, an iOS application developed in partnership with American Conservation Experience. I have with me here Tim England. He's the Director of Technology for ACE. Also Peter Wood, who runs the EPIC program. Emily Bovin, who is an intern working at the Youth Services, and Kelly Barrett, who makes all of this run smoothly from an administrative standpoint. This partnership began in 2012, and we launched the app publicly in April of this year. And this presentation is going to cover the major components of the comprehensive WildSNAP program, including an overview of materials that are hosted on ACE's website at wildsnap.org, where you can find a narrated training module for volunteers and citizen scientists, general WSA monitoring guidance, site-specific guides for the WSAs that are enrolled in the application, the app in the Apple Store. We'll also provide you some information about how the data collection process actually works on an iPad and briefly discuss the interface that creates monitoring reports, which are automatically sent to the appropriate BLM field office. We'll also let you know what information is necessary WSA monitoring capabilities for additional WSAs. So in other words, how to get the WSAs that you manage included into the app, and plenty of time at the end for questions that you might have. So again, this project was a partnership under an assistance agreement between the BLM and American Conservation Experience to develop an electronic citizen science-based monitoring for wilderness study areas. Since 2012, it's been funded through this assistance agreement that was initially seeded with some money for internships. Last year, or actually I think in 2015, we received a grant from the Washington office through the NLCS Scientific Studies Program to finalize the application components and research on how this will improve monitoring capabilities within BLM. Development of the app did kick off in 2012. Was for initial beta testing with volunteer groups in 2014. We've also piloted this at several of our outdoor recreation planner conferences in Utah. And the awards for the assistance agreement total approximately $95,000 over the last 4 years. This agreement has also supported multiple interns and coordination of hundreds of hours of volunteer labor. A key component of this app is the ability for interested members of the public to use the app free of charge and expand BLM's ability to monitor wilderness study areas through a network of engaged citizens. So the public component has always been key, the heart of the mission that we had setting out to develop the WildSNAP app. We have 3 main project goals. The first is to develop an app that replaces paper and pencil data collection by aggregating narrative descriptions, geographic and photographic data on iOS devices. The first iteration of the app sends users to predetermined key observation points to collect georeferenced photos. And these key observation points are selected by the BLM, and they're noted in a site-specific guide for each WSA. And they also appear on the map that's embedded within the app. So the users can navigate to them using the integrated geographic information systems that are within the app. Users can also enter data for any disturbances or impairments or other special features that they might encounter elsewhere within the WSA, but they are directed through the monitoring guide to the key observation points so that we can monitor baseline conditions and over time. And we will discuss the data collection process in additional detail later in the session. Our second goal was to consolidate data into a single database. After a user answers the mandatory questions within the app, were you able to access the trailhead or parking location? Also mandatory questions that will create error reports if they don't answer them at key observation points about the type of disturbance or impairment that they're noting. Then when they return to a Wi-Fi connection, they can click a button to submit their report, and this report is automatically reformatted into a PDF document and sent directly to the BLM office point of contact. The final goal, probably the most important, was to increase BLM's monitoring capacity by training and engaging interested members of the public. So we refer to these as citizen scientists. They are volunteers unless they're also under a signed volunteer agreement. But the app is designed for use by both BLM specialists and the public at large. The app is available to anyone that has an iPad at the moment. We're looking to expand in the future, and that completes a online training at wildsnap.org, and then submits a 10-question quiz and an account request. I think we have, since launch in April, just a few weeks ago, we had 22 people sign up for accounts, and 8 of those are BLM. And we have received some feedback about the process and worked to get that running pretty smoothly. To date, monitoring capabilities have been developed for 9 pilot wilderness study areas in Utah, and the monitoring application is expected to be extended to additional wilderness study areas in the very near future. For the past 8 weeks, Emily Bobin, who's here, has drafted 16 site guides in the Kanab and Monticello and Fillmore and Grand Staircase. So she's just been just jamming and sending those out for field office review here shortly. And those will be included in the app as they're confirmed by the field offices as being correct, and have manager support to include them. So ACE and BLM are also ready and able to incorporate feedback from users. This includes BLM specialists who are using the app so that we can improve the app capabilities through version updates as we move forward. The WSA monitoring application has several major components. It is a comprehensive program. So the first is the online training module for users that's hosted at wildsnap.org. This is a narrated PowerPoint, and it does explain a lot of the concepts behind WildSNAP. The second is a general orientation guide, which explains generic information about BLM's management of all WSAs. So it talks about generally allowable uses or disallowed uses, and it also has a lot of safety considerations. So this is kind of the written version of a job hazard assessment, if you will. Then the meat and bones of the program are our site-specific guides. So these were carefully crafted to describe the situation in an individual wilderness study area, and it explains what access issues you might run into, key observation points BLM has selected for monitoring locations, allowable uses, things that users may, ask about, like, a backcountry airstrip that is actually available for planes to land on. Those are all explained in the site-specific guide. And this is the key part of the app that requires a lot of BLM involvement. Then there's the app itself. It can be used currently on iPads that are second generation. And finally, the monitoring report, which is sent directly to the appropriate BLM office. We go into these in detail a little bit more. The app is available internally to BLM specialists and externally to anyone who completes a brief training and successfully completes a short quiz and then registers for an account. So is anyone on the phone that's been through the process other than me? I'm just curious. Peter, were you able to join, Peter Monley? All right, maybe our 7 other BLM users other than myself are not on the call today, but basically there is a narrative PowerPoint. It's adapted from our training module that's in development at the National Training Center for Wilderness Study Areas from the monitoring module. So I took all the information from a module that's been vetted by a team of subject matter experts and made it specific to the WildSNAP app, and it is an externally facing presentation. We've stripped it of things that only the BLM would want to know about, and we've looked at it from the perspective of a user who is new to WSA monitoring. Once they take the training, they submit a brief quiz. There's 10 questions. If they get 80% right, they can get an account activation. Otherwise, they have to retake the quiz. And the account activation is completed by time here at ACE, and it can take up to 24 hours. So if you register for an account, it may take a day before you're able to actually log into your iPad and use the account. The training that is available for app users answers general questions like, what is a wilderness study area? How does the WSA differ from other wilderness and lands of wilderness characteristics? What are wilderness characteristics that are defined in the 1964 Wilderness Act and the Federal Lands Policy and Management Act, and how do they guide our monitoring efforts? What are the general WSA management principles and notable exceptions? How do we as BLM and citizen scientists monitor WSAs? And we include things like only driving on designated boundary roads, parking and walking, so that we're not, we make it very clear that we're not extending any special driving capabilities to citizen scientists who are using the app. And then we also go over what happens to the data after it's collected through the app. The next component is the general guidance overview. So this is, again, the generic reference information that applies to USAs. And it's a single PDF that summarizes reference information that's going to be the same no matter which wilderness study area you find yourself in. This document, as well as all of the site-specific guides, can be accessed within the app and also at wildsnap.org. So even if you don't have an account, you can head to the website and there's a tab where you can download all of our reference materials. The general orientation guide discusses general WSA policy, and it includes information about the safety considerations, awareness about the inherent risks of doing backcountry monitoring. We also suggest some methods to reduce those types of risks. Additionally, the general orientation guide is where our solicitor-approved liability disclaimer is located. So we did craft that in coordination with the Region Office of the Solicitor, and we had multiple conversations with them about whether or not users would be considered volunteers. So the answer, if you receive it from any user group, you're only a volunteer if you're under a signed volunteer agreement, and we refer to WildSNAP account owners as users or citizen scientists and not as volunteers. So this general orientation guide and the liability disclaimer are also presented to the user before they're allowed to create an account, and they have to agree to the terms before they can proceed. So they're outside of the inherent risks, and we feel pretty confident to minimize BLM's liability and sending folks out into the wild. So the use of the app, I think I went over that. Again, if you want to have a user that's covered under BLM's umbrella to cover, an accident that might happen, you need to work with groups like we have volunteer agreements with Sierra Club and with Wasatch Mountain Club here in Salt Lake. And so if they use the app as part of their official volunteer agreement, they would be covered. And that is a mechanism that you can use if you have longstanding volunteers or if you have established groups where you have relationships and you're going to be asking them to collect this data for you. You could explore that option, but it's not extended to the general public or to any general user. So the next component is the site guide, and this is really the most important and most time-intensive part of WildSNAP in terms of BLM's engagement. So a site guide is the site-specific guidance for each wilderness study area. It also lives within the app, and they're available on wildsnap.org for download. And this includes information about the setting and terrain, the access, driving directions to trailheads, water availability, nearby services, including the nearest hospital, any allowable uses or notable exceptions that users should be aware of before they are surprised by them in the field. We also note identified issues such as maybe graffiti or areas where we've experienced vandalism on multiple occasions. And then we list the key observations that we select for baseline monitoring and monitoring changes at a specific location over time. We also have any supplemental values that were listed in the original Wilderness EIS and report. So these guides are really intended to inform the public about the issues or unique circumstances that affect the management of allowable uses within a particular WSA. And the site guides include overview maps, and they even include photographs for each key observation point, perspective pointing north, east, south, and west. So you get a panoramic, and users can kind of see, they can compare where they're standing. If they're shows them at as arriving at the KOP, they can look at the, when I point my camera north, I can see that this photograph lines up with the one that's in the site guide. Then I feel fairly strongly about this point, so I feel like it's most appropriate for the site guides to be by the BLM. BLM-Utah drafted every site guide. I did hire Emily, who is ACE, to support this project. The predominant time investment for states or field offices who wish to enroll additional WSAs in WildSNAP. And I did also create a blank template, and I discussed defining certain sources, like the original wilderness inventory files that have been sent onto our server here in Utah, or our 5 DEIS and the 91 report, so that you can pull information as and
hey, Allison. This is Rachel. We're having a little bit of a hard time. I don't know if your mic is fully connected, but there's some beeping. I don't know if there's a way you could get closer to the mic.
The beeping is because I'm jumping off.
Are we able to turn the beep off?
No, it's not. It's worse than
I think it has to do with the app and the sound.
Oh, it might be
program.
Coming from, I don't know, maybe coming from the computer app or something, but
I think
when the person moves or something, the camera moves.
anyway, just thought we would let you know.
No, I appreciate that. It's also distracting for me.
Okay, I turned the setting off, so we're good.
Okay. So again, I do have that blank template. Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate it. So I do have that blank template. I'm happy to provide that to other states, and we also make it available to field offices here in Utah that wish to develop site guides for additional WSAs. Emily, did you want to jump in? So one of the questions that we anticipated was how much time do you have in a site guide? And I estimated that when I was writing them, it took me 1 to 3 days to do research and preliminary establishment of a KOP and prep up maps for field work, then a day or more in the field to collect baseline data and photographs, and then another day of edits. What's your turnaround time then?
So I've gotten my site guides just for the draft down to about 2 hours, going through the EISs and whatever other information I can find between online and what's on our server. What takes the most time actually is finding directions to the WSA. So I've been using a mix between going Google Earth, Google Maps, and from our GIS data that we have on transportation. And so finding a road that is not in the WSA and where it's kind of a good area for people just to go to get to the general area of the WSA. So that's what my portion is for the access. For the maps, we are trying to make georeferenced maps using Adobe Illustrator, and I personally have not been able to complete that yet. But for our more seasoned people, it probably takes them a couple hours. And so the key observation points also take a lot of time, as Allison said. It's a couple days out in the field. It really helps if the field office can give us some general guidance of where they would like to see things monitored. So for instance, at the Grand Staircase, we had intrusion reports, and we picked a couple of those points and went there and used those as key observation points. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and we'll also allow some extra time at the end for people to ask specific questions about time investment and et cetera. One of the really nice things about the program is that these site guides can be updated at any time. So if we want to add a key observation point, if something's not clear and we receive questions from the public, it's as simple as editing the Microsoft Word document that I made these in using, and we've included alt text. That was another question that came in from the WO about trying. I have done my very best to make these 508 compliant. I am certainly not an expert in that, but all my templates are built with alternative text, and the hardest part was the NLCS banners to make it in the look and feel. But it's as simple as editing the Word doc, zipping it into a new PDF, and emailing it to Tim, and it will be replaced the next time that user hits Wi-Fi and it gets a version update.
Yeah. Next time they get the update of the app, it'll have that in there.
So that's a really nice feature, is that we can make pretty quick edits to these site guides. They're not locked in time. So with that, we are to the component of the IS application itself, and I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and he's going to give us a whiz-bang tour.
Thanks, Allison. Again, I just want to thank Allison for all the hard work that she's done with this. She's really been such a key lead in getting this program and keeping it going and getting it to the point that we're at today. So I am very appreciative of all the hard work that she's done. Give me a second here, and I'm going to put the app up on the screen so that you all can see us.
Can everyone see the
Not yet.
Apple Pad that appeared?
There we go. Everybody can see that now, correct?
Can we get one confirmation?
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely can.
Just be aware that this that you're seeing on the screen is actually just a reflection of an actual iPad I have in my hand. So you can see on the little video, you can see the iPad in my hand. There are basically three main components. There's the report, there's the mapping, and then there is the guides. So the site guides, you'll see, like she's talked about before, this is the general orientation guide, and you can swipe through and read through those. Or you can go through one of the site-specific guides that has the information that's set up for each specific site, including the PDF maps that were created for Avenza are also included as well. One of the main things about this, of course, is that all these are hosted and they're available offline. I can't take my iPad offline right at the moment because if I do, then we wouldn't be able to see it. But know that the app, the maps, and the reporting all works without any Wi-Fi connection at all. All you need is a Wi-Fi and 3G or 4G enabled iPad, because those are the ones that have the GPS unit built into them. Or you can use an external Bluetooth GPS unit, which we have a list of on the wildsnap.org app or website, and those will also work. And then, like Allison alluded to, we're going to work to make a iPhone version, and almost every version since I think 4 has got a built-in GPS unit. So most of the iOS devices that are out there on the phones will be able to work. Each user has their own space. So the app is actually multi-user. So you can actually have multiple volunteers using the app out in the field, and if they each have an account, when they log in, they can separate out their different reports. So like I will see mine and Peter will see his, but I won't see Peter's, Peter's won't see mine. The other thing is you can log into the app while you're in the field. However, as Peter discovered earlier on in the week, you have to at least log into it once within Wi-Fi range, so they can connect to the website, authenticate the user, and put their information onto the iPad. So that has to be done at least once, and then from that point on, they can go into the field and log into the app without needing a Wi-Fi connection. This is what a report basically looks like. You'll notice it tells who the user is. This is test user currently, but the date, the WSA being monitored, and then the field office where the WSA report will go to. So there's a few basic questions they answer, like can you access the trailhead, and then additional notes. There's a place they can put notes on, and they can access that anytime up until they send the report. One of the other nice features about this is I can actually use this dictation. I can use this awesome feature, period. And it will add all the text into the box so that you can do it. You can take narration while you're in the field. In the spring, like for example, she was talking about the Spring King Key Observation Point. There's a north, east, west photo and south photo as well as notes. And then you can also determine whether you had any visitors, if you saw any visitors, and mark how many people and cars were seen at that key observation point. And I'll show you here real quick with the Kanara Creek here. If I click on the north photo, notice it brings up a little compass in the upper left-hand corner. So I'm just going to turn until I hit north, and then I'm going to follow the instructions. Now I'm going to turn my iPad to the side, take my photo, and then now I know that that's the north photo, and it works for east, west, and south. You can also then do disturbances and impairments. If you notice I have an OHV incursion, I can select from the list that's predetermined here, and there's always an option at the bottom, which is an other, and take a photo. And notice it also tags the geolocation. As soon as I create the record, it grabs my GPS location and puts that into the record. If a user has, like say for example, we don't have any features of interest, we didn't see anything that we really thought was important, so we can click on nothing to report, and that will also go into the report. So everything needs to be filled out, whether it be nothing or something, but it requires the user to fill something. so that when the report comes back, it's actually a completed report. When they're done, they just go back to the first screen, they hit ready to send, and close it, and now it's ready to be sent. So if you go back in here, I can now sync my report, and I gotta figure out why it's not letting me sync. I think I screwed it up when I did my.
I think you didn't answer one.
I think I did. You're right.
Nothing to report.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I screwed this up with my Canara. Anyway, sorry. This is my test environment too, so the actual app does not have this bug, but I was trying to add the feature of being able to do dictation, so I will show you that later.
And Ken, can you also give an update as you were going to do a user training video for hosting on WildSNAP, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. We're going to be doing a user training video that'll be hosted on the wildsnap.org that'll go through and narrate through all these features so that someone can go, and then we'll also put that into the app itself so that people can then view that offline if they need to, if they're out in the field and they have a question. So let's just do a quick new one, maybe. All right. So now that I have that report, you notice that we have one unfinished and one finished. There's an icon now that appears for me to sync. So I'm going to click that icon, and what it's going to do is it's actually going to connect to the server and upload all the data as well as email the report. And I will show you guys real quick. And there's my email that just came up. I'm going to, I just need to stop this real quick. I'm going to pause the sharing of the screen, and I'm going to show you the report here real quick.
Anybody want to give us a Star Wars joke while we're waiting for them to switch screens?
Yeah.
May the Force be with you. I know Aaron Curtis has one. I wonder. Sorry, the app that I use to show the app on the screen is the buggiest part of the whole presentation. I assure you this will not be the worst IT conundrum of any BLM presentation that I've ever been on. Go back into here and share the report here.
Yeah. Says it requires iOS 10.2 or later. Is that a? I have to
That's correct.
My system.
Yes, yes, you're right. It does require 10.2 or later because some of the GPS features that we use, that's a requirement from Apple.
Okay.
So you guys can all now see the report here. So basically, I was able to see everything. No disturbances reported, no features were reported, and then this is where the additional notes will be set up. So this is a copy that got sent to me, but this would actually be the copy that sent. We have a list of all of the offices that have a generic email account that it will go into, and let me show you real quick what the email looks like so that you can see that.
And obviously, if we had taken a real report, it would have photographs with geographic data underneath it. So they can be, several pages long once you have photographs at each key observation point, especially if they've taken additional photos. We do ask them in the general WSA monitoring guide not to take, 60 photographs of a bird, or to be judicious about what they're photographing. And I expect that we'll have some decent compliance with that.
Okay, so here is what the email will look like. It comes in with the subject reading, WildSNAP WSA report, please forward to wilderness specialist, and then attached, and then the name of each report gives the wilderness study area and then the date and time that the report was created. And then also feedback. So you can go to the website, or we have a help@wildsnap.org email address to address any questions or problems that may come up. And that email address is monitored by us all the time. So let's see. Let's go back to the app real quick.
Is there any component of the app, if we're going back to the iPad, that people would like to see specifically? Does anything catch your eye that you didn't get to look at closely while we have it up on the screen?
We're back on this. I'm back on the. Oh, so you can tell by the maps. So we have, like this one, for example, we have to crop just the area to try to keep the size of the map down. Currently, the Nat Geo, the Topo, and the aerial maps are about 2 gigabytes for the entire state of Utah. And that takes us into about, this is about the level of detail that you zoom into. We can increase that or decrease that, but doing that, increasing it will increase the size of the download of the file. So we're trying to be conscious aware. The other thing we can do is we have overlays on there. So I have all the land statuses for the different areas in Utah, but I can turn those off. I can turn the different BLM boundary areas off, as well as the wilderness study areas off. So as someone's out there in the field, they may be wanting to go to a particular WSA, but if they leave too much on, it may be hard to tell where they're at, so they may just be able to turn those off quickly. And then they'll be able to get a better picture of where they are.
One of the questions that you received a lot from other states, Tim, was whether or not you can cut the geographic data down to just the WSAs. Can you explain quickly why that is not possible? Okay, so because of the way that the software development kit works for Esri, you can't just trim out just the WSA areas for the maps. It has to be a clearly combined polygon. So it has to be either, and especially in the case of the iPad, it has to be a rectangle so that it fits on the screen of the iPad. So I couldn't just cut out some areas so you could zoom into some areas and not zoom into other areas. It needs to all be continuous so that there's a consistency of data across, that the iPad knows where it's at. So. Notice that once I sent that report now, it lists that report now as a sent report. And I can, sure. I can't go back. I can't go back in and edit it. I can't change the report anymore now that it's been sent. So, go ahead.
I had a question about on the maps. Does the when you show the map, does it show your location?
So yeah. So on the map, it shows exactly. So if you see the little blue dot right there, this is where we are in Salt Lake. You can look at us on the map here. You mentioned the 2 buttons in the bottom right. Yeah, so there's 2 buttons in the bottom right. The little arrows that go in 4 different directions will expand out to the state size, and then the little target button will zoom in to where you are. And this will follow you around. So if we walked around, it will follow you around to wherever you go. So.
And that works on the WSA maps as well?
Correct.
Okay. The folks who were doing boundary monitoring were really able to tell when they were on a boundary or when they were crossing a line, or because as you know, it can be rather hard to tell at times.
And one of the transparent issues that we've had is we're still working on getting GIS data for routes. We can't just zip together all of our GTLF data and send it off to ACE. When we made our initial monitoring guides, we were deleting in Adobe Illustrator the routes that have, like, the intrusions that would appear in our roads layers, but that are not, in fact, available for motorized use on the ground. But we don't have a comprehensive data set statewide for Utah, so that's a piece that we're still working on, is trying to get a clean data set around each of those WSAs that clearly displays which routes are closed and not available for travel, as separate and distinct from just the linear disturbances that might be in our data set.
So one of the other things, if you notice, there's a little gear icon next to the different maps that you can select. And that's where you can download the offline map. So when you first get the app, it actually has a web connection for the maps. And then you click on this, and this is where you can download them. And you can download just the base maps or just the overlay maps. And you can delete them so that, let's say that we decided that we're putting more information into the boundary layers. We want to put the a few more like roads or trails. Then you can just delete the overlay maps, re-download those, and then take it back into the field, so you don't have to spend the whole time downloading all the base maps. Because the base maps take quite a bit longer to download than just the overlays. The overlays are just a few hundred megabytes, so they don't take very long to download at all.
Any other questions while we have the iPad visible on the screen before we return to the PowerPoint presentation? Okay.
All right.
This is Jerry McGee. I was, excuse me, just wondering. It emails it to somebody. Is there ever a way, or can there be a way eventually where it just puts the reports into a some kind of like a cloud situation or something where it wouldn't be using the email systems?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about what happens to the data collected by the app in the next slide. But Tim, do you want to discuss the?
Yeah, in fact, what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and bring up what it looks like on the back end.
Is this screen being shared?
I'm going to in just a minute once I get it. I'll share my screen here in just a minute once I get that loaded up. So give me just a second here and I'll load that up for you guys.
Is because it seems like if you got a report with a lot of photos and all that stuff, it might not even be able to go through the email system. That's what I was wondering about.
Yeah, so it does a pretty good job of compressing the photos. The reports that I've gotten, I've done ones that had about 20 photos in it, and it was only a couple megabytes large. But you're right, it is feasible that it may be so large that the email system may not handle it. But all the reporting, if you notice on here, there's key observation points. The photos are all stored on a server. So this is actually, you're looking at all the raw data from a report that I generated as a test report. And so all of this is SQL data that can be imported. In fact, we've been doing a test project with California, where we've actually been able to make a connection from inside BLM through the firewall to our Amazon cloud service, that they can go in and download the data directly. Amazon has a new service. I guess it's not that new. It's been out for a little over a year now, but that has a firewall bridge connection between federal government services, such as a DOI, and Amazon cloud services. So there's just once an account is created for that connection, which I have a DOI access for myself, so I created the link. Now there's a secured connection between our cloud service and the internal DOI networks. So, but we do have to manually go in and give firewall access to the individual machines. So, so you'd have to have some kind of designated point in order to be able to get that data off. So, while the connection is trusted between us, IT security within DOI doesn't trust us all the way. So there's a little bit of extra work that has to be done to make sure that goes to a unique place.
And I'll just say, as the state office NLCS lead, I don't have SQL server building skills, so I don't want any of that data in that format. But if other states do, knock yourself out.
And one of the things we committed to, and committed to Allison, and we'll commit to any other state as well, is that on a quarterly basis we will package up all of the WSA reports that were generated and sent to the field offices and give that to them as a package. So even if the email system went down, we would still have those PDFs and be able to get them and deliver them so that they can be archived and used.
So the output for the reports is a PDF?
Yes,
that's correct.
Correct.
Can we see what that output looks like?
Yeah, that's what I'll put up on the screen right now.
So this is our blank fake test. Do you happen to have one handy that has photos in it?
I do. It was.
It's going to take a while to look for it.
It was on my computer downstairs. Not on the computer I have at the moment. I was going to sync this guy so that we saw it, but I screwed up my own report. So
the real reports would have photographs where they visit the new ones.
No, not in the California ones. Yeah. If you guys want to keep talking, and I'll work on the iPad and see if I can get that report to sync up, and I'll show you here in a few minutes.
Peter Malley.
Go ahead, Peter.
Peter Malley from Washington office. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, Allison and Tim and others. Those of us, I'm here with Sandy Scrine, who's my Forest Service counterpart, their wilderness program lead, and John Dennis, who's the Park Service's John, what's your title?
Deputy Chief Scientist.
Deputy Chief Scientist for Park Service. This is a really, really exciting application. And we joined late, so apologies if you already covered this. I understand that the output reports get issued as PDFs, but in what form is the data maintained when it's uploaded? Because how is that data housed, and how can it be organized and searched, or can it be?
Yes, absolutely can. So it's actually in SQL format. So it's just basically a database that has columns and rows, and each of the columns and rows are linked by a unique ID. And as you can see, they're basically just text boxes that host like the latitude, the longitude, any of the text information put in. And then all of the photos are actually stored in a Amazon S3 bucket. So they're just raw pictures, and each one of those actually has a unique ID that goes along with it to link back into the database. But they don't have, the photos don't have any names, and they don't have anything associated with the report itself. We did that as a security feature. That way, if for some reason those photos got into the, out into the wild for some whatever reason, there's nothing that actually ties them back to anything that, let's say that there was any kind of legal mess that happened, there'd be nothing that actually tied it back to anything that proved that it was in, that BLM made any kind of promises for that particular picture. It just exists as a data object itself. The only thing that would tie it back is actually BLM's collected data, so that it would then be all in the purview of BLM. And that was one of the things that we talked, I don't know we quite talked about yet either, which is all of the data that we have, unlike, I know that BLM has been in contracts before where they've entered an agreement with a contractor and then the data but was kept with the contractor. All of the data that we collect is all property of BLM. So if the assistance agreement goes away or the contract, whatever goes away, all that data will be turned over to BLM to do with whatever BLM wants to do.
But the application belongs to ACE. So ACE owns, developed, retains ownership and perpetuity of the app, and we own the data that goes into the app in the form of site guides, GIS data, et cetera, and comes out of the app in the form of usually a PDF, but maybe I could take some classes and figure out how to get some GIS, convert SQL files to
Well, the other thing that we're doing,
GIS
the other thing we're
files.
doing right now with California as part of the testing that we're doing with them is it's not only just SQL directly controlled database, but we're actually working on making a link directly into ArcGIS, so that they are ArcGIS objects as well, so that it can be used for mapping or reporting in that instance as well.
So I want to make sure we have enough time for questions at the end. Do you think we could return and finish up the last couple of slides on the PowerPoint, and then we'll be able to take whatever other questions folks might have?
Let me stop sharing my screen for a second, and I will get the, maybe.
Bear with us just a minute, guys.
Yep, give me just a minute. The computer is not behaving at all.
So one important concept that I think we should mention is that the reports that are submitted by the public are analogous to a letter that BLM receives in a lot of ways. So in order to be considered part of the WSA's permanent file, those reports need to be verified by the BLM. I don't know if that seems like splitting hairs, but we did get some questions about that from an interested individual here in Utah. And after discussing it with my boss, I think that it's really correct that we only include these in the permanent file after BLM has gone out to verify that intrusions are where they, where the user said they were, that the conditions that were captured in the app are in fact, a correct reflection of what's on the ground.
Okay.
Okay, yes. You want to jump in there? Okay. If you have your phone off mute, you might want to mute it. We're getting some feedback. So again, the report is sent to the BLM field office. Once we verify it, the report can become part of the WSA's permanent file. And we haven't made specific promises to the public about when or if restoration will take place, but I've had conversations with every field manager that has WSAs enrolled in the app, and the expectation is that if the public or the BLM go out and monitor the WSAs, that we will take appropriate action, and that could take many forms, at the discretion of the field officer, the field office manager, but we have set clear expectations that we're not going to allow intrusions to go unreclaimed or unaddressed when they're noted through the app. And then at least quarterly, I'll be meeting with ACE and following up with field staff for the reports that we receive. So we don't know at this point what kind of interest we're going to get, how many reports we're going to get per quarter or per year, but we're hoping that a quarterly basis meeting will be sufficient for us to review the reports that have come in, contact the field office, ask for an update. Hey, have you guys gone out and verified this? When can we expect to see some resolution of the issue? Next slide. Okay, I kind of covered the restoration of impacts. So, and we are clear with the users as well that there can be extenuating circumstances like requirements to do NEPA that could cause us not to be able to address the intrusions that they note immediately. So that is clear in our volunteer training module. All right, the most important part that you guys have all been waiting patiently for, how do you add wilderness study area monitoring capabilities to the app? So there's two different pieces. One is for additional WSAs within Utah. And in Utah, we have full monitoring capabilities for the whole state in the app. And all we have to do to add additional WSAs is to create a site guide and establish key observation points, essentially, for those WSAs. So we're asking that field office staff who are interested in expanding WildSNAP to their field offices become familiar with the app and the relevant materials, spend a little bit of time on wildsnap.org, download the app to your iPad and see how it works. If you think it's going to be a good fit for your program, or you can see the benefit to using that, then the next step is to start working on a site guide. I do have blank templates. Emily has been working diligently to try to cover some draft site guides for offices that have already expressed an interest. And you need to establish appropriate key observation points for that WSA. So you need to be looking through historic monitoring records, find out where there's high potential for intrusion, areas that you've had historic vandalism, et cetera, and select a KOP where you're going to take panoramic photos, north, south, east, west, to monitor conditions over time. And then we are also asking you to physically visit your WSA and take those first 4 KOP photos at each observation point. Look at it from the eyes of a member of the public who might be going out to collect data on your behalf, and make sure that your access directions are correct, that everything makes sense from an outside user's perspective, and then also address any unusual authorized uses or issues that you might find on your field visit in the site guide. We're also asking field offices to reach out to your partner groups. A lot of you guys already are working with partner groups that you know might have an interest in undertaking some wilderness study area monitoring. Ask them, if they'd like to be involved, push the program once you have some WSAs enrolled that are close by that they might be interested in visiting. And then finally, just a reminder, we want to honor our obligation to manage WSAs under the non-impairment standard. So the expectation is that you need to review the reports as they come in and undertake restoration activities as necessary and appropriate. The more complex part of adding WildSNAP capabilities is for other states. So how do you get WildSNAP to Montana or California or Oregon? Well, first you're going to need to establish an agreement. BLM-Utah's current existing assistance agreement expires at the end of fiscal year 17, so we will not be able to have anybody jumping onto that, even if we wanted to. It's specific to the state of Utah and it is expiring. So those states would need to establish a funding mechanism directly with AIDS. And you should really speak with your grants and agreements officer or your contracting officer to determine what you want done and if the appropriate mechanism is an assistance agreement. If it's going to have heavy BLM involvement and we have interns, that's likely a more appropriate way to go. Or potentially if you want something a little different, then a contract may be more appropriate. I am not an expert in that, so please, please work with your office staff who are experts in contracting and assistance agreements. Then you're also going to need to find some money for the agreement. And I did ask Tim and Peter to kind of go over a little bit of the known costs. So do you guys want to speak for your own organization about projected costs for expanding to other states?
Sure. Peter, go ahead and talk.
Yeah, so the first thing I'll just say is that we're tremendously flexible with the unique needs of each state and or field office or district that is interested in this. Not every scenario is going to look the same, so our cost structure similarly will mirror your needs. What we have done here in Utah is utilized interns to develop a lot of the content and assist with the iOS development. So whether that's in the field collecting data or whether that's going through the GIS and mapping side, we've definitely found the interns to be a cost-effective and efficient and really exciting way to bring this project to fruition.
And if you are going to fund an intern, I do suggest that you plan for a minimum of 16 weeks so that they'll be eligible for employment under the Public Land Corps Hiring Authority. And Kelly, I think our current cost for internships is about $1,020 a week, give or take. Different states vary.
Depends on what you want to pay, really. If your stipend, if you're looking to, shoot for a GS7 level or a GS3 level, it's going to look pretty different in how you want to pay the intern. So that directly affects your costs.
And I should also mention, I know we've got public affairs personnel here as well. You need to engage your public affairs staff early in the process. I understand that there may be some guidance coming out from WO600 about how to get applications approved. Do I hear somebody that wants to jump in there? Is that, I heard some noises.
Hi, this is Elise. I'm the social media lead here in the Washington office. So with any application, make sure to engage your state public affairs early in the process. It'll just need to be a quick write-up of what you want that for, where you see it going, if it's internal, external. And then from there, your state public affairs people can engage with us here in the national office and we can talk through that. And then on top of that, not only can we make sure that we're doing everything the correct way with an application, but then when we do get it up and going, we can be there to support you guys and make sure that we get volunteers or partners and things like that through social media and press releases. So.
And then from the, oh, go ahead. You have a question? No. I was going to say from the actual application development side where there's going to be some money as well. One of the things is the goal of this is to have just one application, so just one WildSNAP app that works for multiple states. So right now it just works with Utah, so there's no like select your state when you log in or anything like that. But going forward, that would be the ideal, is where we have one app that's on the App Store that can meet the states of Utah and California and Oregon and and Wyoming. So that the user, all the user does is log in, and then of course depending upon where their address was, it'll put that state first for them, so it'll make it easy. But they can always select other states. So some people may want to go to Wyoming and then go on vacation to California, and maybe want to go visit a WSA area and do something like this. So we want to make it as easy to use for the general public as possible. The other thing we have the option of being able to do is we can put in either specific questions or specific information that is only available to, let's say, BLM internal staff versus the general public. So it would identify you as a user with your BLM email address, and then you may have additional features inside the app that is available that wouldn't be available to the general public. So those are different things that would be available as well. As far as cost is really going to be really dependent upon the state. Like a state like California, which is much bigger and is going to have a lot more work involved, is probably going to be more take more funds than a state like Wyoming or Idaho, which may be smaller. So it will really vary, and we want to make sure that it's custom and works with what the funds and the ability you guys have. So we try to be as flexible as possible. One of the things that we've talked about is that ACE is not here to make money. We're not a contracting organization that's trying to make money by selling apps. We're trying to provide a service, and we're trying to be a partner with BLM and other agencies to provide something that works for everybody, because we all know that reporting more and more today is becoming an increasingly hotbed issue. And the more that we can actually get the public involved and engaged with this. Sorry, is there a question?
Hey folks, sorry to interrupt. This is the Peter Molly and the rest of the Wilderness Steering Committee Policy Council gang. Love the presentation. We have to run, but thank you so much. Allison will be in touch.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks all.
Just to finish my thought, we're just trying to be partners in this, and so we're just trying to make sure that the funding covers the costs that ACE has to incur for the services that we do. So.
Yeah, and then just something to think about for state leads, I suggest that you start reaching out to your field staff and see who has an appetite for piloting this program in your state. I definitely don't suggest jumping in and trying to get all 200 WSAs in your state or whatever you manage enrolled in the program. Select a subset, try to do a really good job. I do have templates available that I'm more than happy to share. And you're going to want to decide who's going to be responsible for that. Are you going to pass the responsibility down to the field staff and train them on what you want in your site guides? Is the state lead going to be responsible for initially drafting those pilot site guides and then running them by the field for review? These are conversations you're going to want to have with your state's leadership team. So whatever the answer is, just make sure you set clear expectations and reasonable timelines, and I'm happy to provide you with my experience in Utah on that. And then finally, there is some data management requirements that belong to BLM. So ACE needs us to provide the GIS data that we want to go into the app to support the mapping component. And that usually includes your WSA boundaries, your land tenure. Ideally, it would include access routes. Again, that can be problematic for a lot of states because it won't be clean data, if you will. And then I have committed, and I would strongly urge other states to do this, to having BLM draft up and have final ownership over all the words that are in our site guides. I felt strongly that that was an important product for us to create for consistency and for accuracy, and not to farm that out to ACE. So, and then also you've got to provide contact information for each of your WSAs and your key observation points. These literally exist as Excel files. I emailed Tim an Excel file. Hey, here's the WSA name, this is what field office manages it, here's the generic email address. So they're two Excel files. Same for key observation points, just lat and long and the name of the KOP. So with that, I know we're just a few minutes over. We're going to open it up for any other questions. We will also provide the recorded version of this PowerPoint by email, and the static version of the PowerPoint is attached to the calendar invite. So what did we miss? What can we improve? What do you guys want to know?
Hi, Allison. This is Bill in Moab. I should know the answer to this question, but I don't. I guess I'm wondering how far off an iOS and especially an Android version might be available. The reason I ask, the GPS-equipped iPads are quite costly, I have a hunch that very few of our volunteers are going to own them or want to purchase them. And I don't think they're going to want to lug something like that to some of the spots we get to. I think this would be much, much more useful if it were iPhone or Android based.
Yeah, so going forward with that, Android based maybe much further off. There's quite a big difference.
Are you talking about years or weeks or months?
Well, I don't plan to pay for an Android expansion in Utah unless the number of users, unless we receive a number. So I've received one email from a person who was a member of the public that wanted to use it on Android. If we get the demand, it might be worth the cost investment, but I don't see Utah investing in that unless we get a sincere demand from the public. The iPhones, though, I've been begging for money and now just need a mechanism to pay ACE to expand to iPhones, which could be hopefully this fiscal year, maybe early next fiscal year.
If not at the end of this fiscal year, it'd be the beginning of next fiscal year. It's not going to take a hard development to do on the iPhone. Will take a significant amount of resources and time to do an Android version of it. So,
okay.
Hey, this is Tim Fisher from the Washington office. I had a question about data management. If, let's say, this gets to be really successful, you end up with 30 reports on the same WSA, how do you plan on managing that information and merging it?
So as far as that is concerned, that's one of the reasons why we want to provide the raw data for in a database format instead of just a bunch of PDFs, so that it can be put into a system. One of the things that the BLM office is experimenting with is using, and I'm trying to remember the product. It's not Esri Collector. Esri, I think it's called Insights. And what that does is it allows you to combine a bunch of information and overlap it so that you can see trends. And so the use of the data would really have to belong to BLM because, we don't know what your goals are. We don't know what in the end, what are you looking for? We're just trying to provide all the data that we can as a resource so that you can go and respond to inquiries. Allison, did you have anything?
Yeah, so currently, again, the field office will initially receive a PDF. Ideally, I'd like to get the data from ACE and then convert it to a shapefile that has hyperlinked photos. I think that would probably be the most useful tool, but I'd like to get some feedback from field staff who are receiving these reports. So I'll be leaning on Price and Salt Lake and Fillmore and Cedar as they receive reports to let me know what's going to be the most useful. And truthfully, this is really a work in progress. Again, we have no idea what to expect. We've finally crested the wave of getting the app out there and available for public and internal use. And the next step, I'm sure, is going to be something we haven't even thought of, hey, can the data come in this format? And then I will work with Tim to meet the needs of our field office outdoor recreation planners. But I think that already on this call, I've had some questions that are causing me to think about maybe we want to look at the back end monitoring reports a little bit differently. Still have the PDF, but also look at different ways to get that back end data to the appropriate field offices in the most usable format.
Right, and like I said, one of the great things that's come out of the California project that we've been doing is addressing some of those things and starting to test. Okay, now that we have some data, what's the best way to use it? How do we get it into something that we can use for reporting and not just saying, okay, yes, we fulfilled our requirements based upon the standard. We have our piece of paper that has pictures and GPS things. How can we expand that out to be actual use? And so that's, like I said, that's an evolving process right now.
Thank you.
Kevin, also in the Washington office. So if you're a volunteer and you do these, do you see the reports that you've already filed, or do you see the reports others have filed on the same spot, or how does that work?
That's a great question. So yes, you'll see the reports that you have filed, but you will not see the reports that other people have filed. So on the iPads themselves, in the same spot where you found the orientation guides and that is also where you'll find copies of each of the reports that you've sent off. So you can still look at them and view them. We had a lot of testing with this, and we also, in order to get it approved by Apple, I wanted to block out any cultural sensitive information. We wanted to try to redact that into the copy that the user has. Apple rejected that, and their main whole thing was, well, if the user went out and actually looked at it and they took their photo, then the app can't block them from seeing what they saw in person. So mainly it was a privacy violation that Apple had as part of their terms and agreements. So what we've done is, while the user can see that, we've made it more difficult for them to be able to necessarily share that. So you can't just email the PDF yourself to wherever you want to. It only goes through the mail system that's built into the app that goes to the email addresses that we designate. Is it foolproof? No. Can you hack your iPad and try to steal the data off of it? I'm sure that some people probably could figure out to do that, but it's not an easy process. And the vast majority of the people who will be using this, I think, will not have that high level of technical expertise to do that.
And if we catch people posting things online or whatever, we'll remove their account and address them.
And that's what I was talking about before, where there's that object that's built into each one of the photos as they're taken. We will always know if someone puts a photo up on the internet if it was one of the photos that was taken with the app. So, and it says clearly in there that all of the data that you collect is the property of BLM. So if someone does try to go out we do have information that can help remove that if needed.
Since they have
but the user could just take a photo on their personal, the camera within their iPad, and they would have ownership of that photo. Correct.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do to stop that. We're just trying to mitigate issues.
If they're committed enough
well, I don't know if we would want to stop it. That seems like...
Yeah, the only thing we were trying to avoid was someone found an Indian site that was very sensitive that maybe BLM knew about but didn't necessarily advertise, and then tried to post out all that information widespread so that then other people come and potentially damage the site. We're just trying to be as sensitive as we can to that kind of thing. So.
This is Vanessa Rathland representing 508. So I think the app is great. I think in the hands of employees, it'll make it a lot easier to get all of the data into one place. The only thing I see is those reports are PDF files, and so they would need to be 508 compliant as PDF files. And my only thing is the templates or the coding that you're using to generate the reports, are you guys aware of making sure they're accessible? Alt tags are showing up on images and logos and stuff like that. You're using, style sheets and headers, the H1 through 6 tags type of a thing. That's my only concern.
Yeah, I did take a class from Catherine Emmett, and I used the information that I received from that class to generate the site guides and the general monitoring guide. I would be so grateful if someone who was more of an expert in 508 compliance than myself would look through our Word and PDF. So I created in Word, and then I converted to PDF, basically. But I did write alt text for all of the logos and the photographs. I'm sure it could be improved, but I would be really grateful if somebody could spend some time on that. The PowerPoint we narrated, so I was hoping that would count towards some sort of, I mean, that was the purpose of narrating the PowerPoint, was to allow people to hear it rather than to...
And one of the things we're doing too is we're actually moving that into a YouTube video that actually has the text right along, so it has subtitles as well as narration. So as far as I know, that's as far as we can go to make it 508 compliant. But again, we're open to suggestions for sure.
So that's all you can do after the fact, and making sure that your training is great and all of your resources and your site guides of how to do these things and how to do the apps. That's all totally doable. It's the actual reports coming out of the app that I'm concerned about.
Well,
as
so
the data.
how we would write alt text for photographs that were collected by someone in the field that wasn't a
The text for them to enter their own text, correct?
So that
they'd
can we
have the
embed
label,
that?
they'd do.
Yeah, so my thing is that there's certain things that the app itself or the way the data is collected or something like that, it would be additional fields or whatnot, but basically on the code side, if we can have access to that and change and add as much as we can, so that report is not a burden basically to make 508 compliant as, it's exported and now you have, all these photos in it and BLM logos are everywhere in it and stuff like that, and every single one of them is missing an alt tag. Nothing is 508 compliant when you run a checker on it because it just spit it out and there was no time or effort on the back end in the code to make sure that when it's exported that it's exporting a pretty good accessible document. Maybe there's a little bit of cleanup at the end, but it won't be a burden to any BLMer to like quickly run a checker and fix anything that's, spit out from the app.
Happy to work with you and look into that. I guess I just want some clarity. If the only place the reports are going is to the BLM field office as an attachment in an email and to the user who created them, does our 508 compliance still apply? If they're not being publicly posted or available anywhere on a website, is there still a requirement to make them 508 compliant?
So just because it's not going on a website doesn't mean it doesn't need to be 508 compliant. If it's a part of your record, if it could be FOIA'd, if it could be, requested in any way, it needs to be 508 compliant.
I understand.
If you're going to use it as an appendix in a NEPA document, it's got to be 508 compliant.
So I guess I'm playing devil's advocate here, but how is any of the data you guys have collected so far 508 compliant then? Is there an effort in BLM to make it 508 compliant? Because if that's the case, we'll be more than happy to do whatever you guys suggest. I mean, we want to be as compliant as possible.
Yeah, so the data when you're in SQL and when you're talking about integrating into ArcGIS and all that stuff, that's great. That's awesome. It's the reports, the actual export to a PDF file, that document type and the storage of it and the use of it and it being FOIA-able and, you use it as an appendix in a NEPA document to justify whatever decision we're doing, that triggers 508.
Okay,
so it's just, is there stuff we can do on your guys' side in the code to help basically make that a better document as it's being exported out?
Sure,
it sounds like the best thing to do is maybe if I reach out to you, Vanessa and Catherine, separately, like we could have a separate conversation about how to do that.
Yeah, and that's the only one little thing, and then the rest of it looks great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that feedback.
Yeah.
Any other programs that have potential pitfalls that we need to be aware of to avoid or questions from the field at this point in time? And we're available, so if you want to go one more slide, we are also available. I've got our emails in the PowerPoint, so if you look in the narration, the contact for myself and Emily, Tim, and Peter is all in there. We are available anytime to answer questions. But if you have them now, we'll stay as long as people are talking to us.
All right, I think that's it.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Have
much.
a great rest of the day.